And could we get roll call, please?
For a quarter.
For a quarter. Anybody got a quarter for them to do a roll call?
Jennifer Riffle.
Present.
Ryan Slack.
Here.
Auden Schindler. Jackie Whitsitt.
Here.
Bill Infante. Gary Tenenbaum is here, and Katie Schwer.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Okay, we just want to thank Grassroots TV for being here and for broadcasting our meetings live. They're just faithful as can be. People can
Just
watch
making up excuses.
tonight, or they can watch it
Whenever. It's there for perpetuity.
on www.grassrootstv.org. Our videographer this evening is Natalie Ray. And looks like the famous John Masters is here as well. There is normally a mayor's coffee tomorrow. However, I cannot be there. Brian cannot be there. Is there somebody willing to stand in, Ryan Slack?
I will not be there.
He will not be here. Anybody else available at 8 o'clock for a half hour or so? That'll work.
Sorry.
Um,
It'll be canceled tomorrow.
Go over at 8 to 8:30.
would you mind?
I can
Okay.
do it. You're gonna buy though.
Okay, well, I'll have to give you my credit card tonight.
No, I was just teasing you, of course.
Okay, someone will be at Mayor's Coffee, but it won't be me, it will be Susan Philp. So thank you, Susan, so much. So while we got it here, why don't we just ask Gary Tannenbaum if he wouldn't mind reading the Basalt is Inclusive. Of course, he's the only one
Or
with
put
food
a
in his
radish
mouth.
in my mouth. All right. Basalt is an inclusive, sustainable mountain community that boasts both historic charm and progressive vision. It is an engaging place to live, work, and play while offering an abundance of creative, professional, educational, and recreational outlets.
So true, thank you very much. The consent agenda has minutes on it and modification of premises for City Market, music on Market Street, special event, and Aspen Valley Ski and Snowboard swap already? Oh my God. Is there a motion to approve or is there a question?
I have
Yes,
a
ma'am.
comment. I believe that I was here for the July 2nd minutes, but it states that I was not.
I'm sorry, for the July 2nd, you were not here for that. Did I put you on?
Executive
It
session.
was for the executive session.
Oh, that's why. Okay, that's right. I wasn't here for that. Okay, thanks.
Who knows they're here right now?
Yes.
Excellent. So did we get a motion?
So then I will move that the town council approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. For the next little bit, we're gonna ask people in the public who have items that they want to talk about for 3 minutes or less to come up to the podium for items that are not on the agenda. So anybody who would like to come up, just identify yourself by name. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. That's it, and Pam's gonna be the timer. Hello, madam.
Hi.
Do you care to state your name?
My name is Carol Hawk, live in Basalt, down in Willits. So I'd like to bring to your attention the scheduled removal of a stop sign on Willits Lane at Meadow Drive that I believe will be dangerous. That stop sign's been there for 10+ years. I discovered this when we were looking into concerns of a friend in the neighborhood who was upset to learn that a new subdivision is going in across Willits Lane from his home on Soper Circle, and that the developer is looking to create an access road directly behind his home and approximately 150 feet from this stop sign. My understanding was that the stop sign was installed in anticipation of future development and could easily be the access point for that land. Apparently, it was subdivided and a 10-acre parcel was sold and the new owner is going through the approval process. Requiring the access point to be at the existing three-way stop seems to be the most practical, as from what I have seen, they are proposing a raised crosswalk with 2 flashing pedestrian lights just 150 feet up from the existing stop sign. This is just on the edge of the urban growth boundary in a predominantly rural area, and this town council had objected to flashing pedestrian signs in the more dense area of Willits in the past. So I don't know why that would be something we'd want. So I've come to find out that it's been decided without much serious discussions with the neighborhood that the stop sign is being removed Monday, August 26th. This is a week after school starts, and the school bus will be picking children up and dropping them off in this exact location that used to have a stop sign, but now will not. In addition, I've witnessed many near misses with bicyclists and turning cars on that bike path along Willets Lane that crosses Evans. And the stop sign at Meadow Drive gives everyone time to see what's coming and going along that bike path. Chief Knott and I spoke today, and he said tons of people have asked to see this stop sign go away. And I'm asking the question, instead of asking the question and getting little or no response, it's not a green light to go ahead. There should have been open houses to discuss something this important, and I hope we'll be given that courtesy as a neighborhood, because I do believe that it's going to be a safety issue.
Thanks, Carol. Others?
Keith McDougall, 680 East Cypress Drive.
Hi, Keith. Thanks for coming up.
Thank you for having me. Here to talk about the flash flooding on the 4th and 5th of August. For those of you that don't know me, I've been the face behind a lot of emails that have hit council and county commissioners and state reps. So that's the secondary reason I'm here, so at least you know me. Several of you live on my street, may or may not know me. To clarify, I'm here to speak for myself only, not the whole Hillside District. Everyone has had varying degree of damage. Mine was pretty minor. Others have had perhaps tens of thousands. I don't know those numbers. And everyone has different opinions on what should happen. Three main concerns: safety and communication, the short and long-term mitigation plan, and deferring liability to the residents. Safety and communication. The Hillside District is, in my opinion, at higher risk now because flash floods have carved new ruts in paths in unanticipated places. Barriers and sandbags have been placed that will push water in new directions. We need to be informed of any new changes as they happen in the future so that we can be alert for water flows. Thanks to Ryan for developing a Hillside email distribution list. Hopefully that'll help get information out. Short and long-term flood mitigation plan. This was emphasized by Scott Condon in an article today, and it's really my biggest sticking point is why don't we have one after a year, and who is responsible for it? I found an article from July a year ago that County Commissioner Jill Ryan said they were working on it. Is that the case? I don't know. Who's on first? Who's developing that plan? I've had communications with Eagle County manager. Haven't got a straight answer on if it's even been started yet. I suspect it hasn't. And finally, deferring liability to the residents. We don't have the information. I'm not even sure what information is out there. We're not qualified to assess that information. I don't see how we can just carte blanche say everyone is responsible to protect their home, but still you may be liable for those downhill from you.
Keith, that's our 3-minute warning, so if you could just wrap it up. You can, if you need to finish it.
Nothing,
go
that's
ahead.
pretty well it. I was just wanted to thank Ryan for being the face of it. He's taken a bit of abuse this week. And I know it's a tough spot for everyone in the town and all of us residents. Thanks.
Thank you.
Keith. Others? Others comment? Yes, ma'am. Hi, Tony.
Hi, Mayor Whitsitt. Hi, everyone. For the record, my name is Tony Kronberg, and there's 3 things that I just wanted to bring forward. The first one is I wanted to let you know that how beautiful your gardens are coming into the entryway into Basalt, and I believe it's Ponderosa Park over there by Valero. That is so well done, the walkways, and I'm looking forward to the other side, 7-Eleven, matching the beauty on the other side. So I just want you to know that did not go unnoticed. And then secondly is is it okay if I make my comments right now on the dog leash public hearing that you're going to have, and also approving the resolution to hire the pool consultant?
Well, let's put it this way. We only give about 3 minutes at this point, so if you run out of your 3 minutes, maybe you could stay and comment when it's on the agenda. Could you
Okay.
do that?
Madam Mayor, if I may,
Yeah.
if you'd like your comments to be considered as part of the public hearing, they need to be made during the public hearing.
There you go.
For the pool is not a public hearing.
Okay, so I'll make the comment on the pool right now, and I wanted to say thank you very, very much for approving the resolution, which I anticipate you'll do tonight, for the hiring of a pool consultant. Has exceeded my expectations. As you know, I think most of you know, I've been coming maybe 5 years, 4 or 5 years, to try to get an addition of a family warm water pool where the kiddie pool is. And the fact that you've hired a pool consultant, that is just, as I said, exceeded my expectations. And I wanted to personally thank Ryan and Susan very much, because as you know, these projects, there's a lot of going back and forth, and without the two of them, that this would not have happened. And then also many thanks to the post committee. So I just wanted to put that forward, and I'm really looking forward to the public outreach, and then hopefully we can include Crown Mountain Park in these discussions, because I've said before, whatever we don't get in Basalt, we're gonna push over to Crown Mountain Park. So whatever's gonna fit for Basalt is great, and then we really need something mid-valley. So thank you so much, and I'll just make a quick comment during the doggy leash. Okay, thank you so
Tony.
much.
Yeah. Other comment? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. That this is so important to me that I invited the Roaring Fork Valley newspaper, and Steve Aldridge is here tonight, and he's hopefully going to do a big coverage on it. So I just want to say that.
No pressure, Steve. Other comments for items not on the agenda? Hearing none. Our next section is mayor and council reports and comments. And I just wanted to acknowledge Brian, our town manager, and the other staff who have been working on the problems up there on the hill, and mostly to acknowledge the folks that are up on the hill that caught a lot of mud and rain and debris. It's much more isolated of a problem than what people saw during the fire, and so maybe a lot of folks didn't notice that these people have been under a huge threat and nervous every day that it's gonna rain, but we notice, and I think that Ryan will maybe cover part of this in his manager's report, but he is doing his very best to get information to staff and out there to the folks who are being impacted by this, and I actually think Keith said that. So that's all I have for comments.
I would also like to pass along a thanks to Chief Knott and his team. I know during the flood night, they were patrolling our neighborhood. They came by and knocked on my door, made sure I was okay. And my heart goes out to all my neighbors that are dealing with a lot of work. And the town is behind you guys, and we will stay on it till we find a solution. So please keep letting us know what you need.
Thanks, Ryan. Jen?
So you and I had a meeting after the last meeting with with the new Eagle County Commissioner, Matt Shear, and it was a very positive meeting where we talked about how we can collaborate between the town and Eagle County, and I'm really grateful for his service. And so I look forward to the town continuing to have a super positive relationship, and that has definitely shown through with Eagle County's new emergency manager, Birch. He has been very receptive to all of the residents who outreached after the flash flooding. I'd also like to give a shout out to Stacy Kraft and Michael Kerr for the drone video that they produced of the flash flood and how that affected the shooting range. I thought it was really educational, and it's a great piece for posterity to be able to utilize with CPW to illustrate the environmental impact and some of the concerns. And then I'd also like to give a shout out to all of the residents on Sopris Drive and Cedar Drive who banded together on Sunday. It was really fantastic to see how we took care of each other. I know I personally was part of moving 4,000 pounds of bark in 10 minutes to sandbag, and so may we just continue communicating with each other to ensure that that we continue to take care of each other and be part of this community of who we are.
Thanks, Jen, and thanks for the reminder about us meeting with Matt. I kind of forgot.
That was
Anything that's-
eons ago.
Even if it was before breakfast, I don't remember generally. Gary, did you have anything?
I do.
Thank you. All right. Oh, Brad Mahoney, the manager of the town of Basalt, has some comments.
So a couple updates for you that I had here. So I was going to bring the stop sign removal up to you all, and that is something that staff has talked about and contemplated for a few years since I've been here, anyways. And it's actually my understanding that the reason for the placement of that stop sign was speed control on Willets Lane, and the direction we have from the Manual on Uniform Traffic Code Devices, MUTCD, I believe it is, says that stop signs and yield signs should not be used for those purposes. We don't have a four-way stop condition in that area. We don't have a crosswalk in that area. To my knowledge, the school bus, and maybe Greg can fill in, but the school bus doesn't stop right there at that location to drop kids off from school. And then we also did go through and looked at a speed study for the last 30 days in that area, and made a determination that in the northbound lane we did have about 69,800 vehicles pass through in that 30-day period, and of those 458 had been speeding. So it was basically less than 1%, so we don't seem to have much of a speeding problem. One of the issues that we do have from a practical standpoint is you do have increased noise as some of the larger trucks in that area slow down and then speed up, revving their engines. And then a few years ago we went in and replaced or repaired some of the asphalt in that area. With the heavy trucks, you get a lot of pushing. And just a few years later, that's already back to a condition that we're going to need to look at a repair again. So we believe that stop sign in that location is not doing a great service, and we believe that safety is addressed. And so we did reach out and have informed all of the HOAs in that area, just so that they're aware, and we're going to put out variable message boards so that people know that stop sign would get removed, to start conditioning them to the new circumstance out there, and so that's essentially the process. It wasn't just done arbitrarily or quickly without thought. So that's where we are with that. Secondly, as it relates to the flooding up on the hill, I've been out to, I think, pretty much all of the properties at this point, and with the exception of maybe two. And today I was able to meet with NRCS, who are
That stands for?
Natural Resource Conservation Service. That's the federal agency that gave us the grant money for the watershed protection. And I also met with our engineer, and discussions with them were basically we need to prioritize this project, and how quickly can we get it done. So NRCS did agree to do the survey work for us. They're able to do that in-house, so that saves us time mostly. And so probably by the end of the week, we'll have that data in. And then Scott with SGM is going to start on the design for, the remedy in that area. Also, and then timing on that would be, ideally at the end of next week. So we also talked with our contractor who's doing the work, and just kind of gave him a heads up that we'd like to prioritize this work. So, I think the wheels are certainly turning, and, staff is doing everything we can to expedite. We know what the impacts were, and are going to do everything we can to get that done quickly. So the other thing that was mentioned was related to a mitigation plan. So we do have a mitigation plan in place that's been completed and designed, and that's been deployed or started to be deployed. So the Hill District in part was protected up over by the Bassburg. So we actually ended up reducing quite a volume of mud and debris from one drainage, only to discover that another drainage that was not initially identified, because it does drain a pretty small area, but when you put that kind of volume into it, it doesn't really matter. It's still gonna come like torrents down the hill. So the that plan is being deployed, and you may not see it because it's not all in basalt. It's kind of finding its way around Basalt Mountain in general. We will kind of refocus our efforts over here, and I feel pretty positive about that we'll be able to get it done in pretty quick order. As we heard from Keith, that I did start an email contact list, and I'll just be sending out updates, probably almost daily as I get new information. And then finally, as of Thursday, Stephen Jowen with NRCS will be making contact with individual property owners. There may be some design elements on properties, private properties, as we've done already, like at the Bassburg, for example, where they can put elements on people's properties to help divert water. One thing that is important to keep in mind is none of these measures that you put into place are 100% guarantee of property protection. You can't anticipate, big cloud bursts that could bring down volumes of water that we have never seen before. But they're really designed to take as much of the anticipated rainfall that you can, but you're working with the infrastructure that you have in place. You can't reconstruct the entire roadway. So I think we've got some really good ideas, concepts that we talked about today, and I'll just keep you all updated on that progress. So my hope is to get it done ASAP. And let's see. One thing that's not on the agenda tonight, but I wanted to let you know, is bringing back the resolution for declaring a climate emergency. It's on our radar. We just have a ton of stuff that was timely, so we'll bring that back at the next meeting for you. So I think. Oh, no, there is one more thing, I'm sorry. As it relates to the shooting range, so there was flooding that happened over in that area and carried some debris down, including, you can see some of the sort of spent plastic shells from shotguns. So it was one lane of the shotgun area that did come down. CPW's been up there reconstructing the roadway, and so that's sort of been cleaned up there, but there is some concern, like what did that do to the environment up there? So I have been on the phone, and hopefully this Friday I'm going to have a meeting with CPW and the Birch Barren with Eagle County, as well Rick LaFaro with Roaring Fork Conservancy. I think we want to still move ahead with some testing up there to make sure. Rick did pass along some information to me that came from a hydrologist who said that it was a pretty remote possibility that there was contamination that would affect the waterways or the health of the rivers or streams. But that's not proven at this point, so I'm glad to hear that, but we will follow through. The other thing is, so Stacy Kraft and I met out there yesterday. She's the one that kind of showed me where some of the debris had come down, and something I learned was that if you can inform the county, which has been done at this point, of a potential environmental issue, and then they can carry forward that torch. They have the resources to be able to help facilitate testing and things like that. So not sure if we'd go with like a private firm like this, or if the state through CDPHE, which is the Colorado Department of Health and Environment, would be able to do that testing in-house. But I'll keep you all posted on that. But I think we did set aside money in this year's budget for doing things like testing, but I would also like to find a partnership in there with CPW and perhaps the county. And I did run it by Rick today. If we do testing privately, would they be interested in sort of project managing that on our behalf? And then we would make those contributions to pay for it. So I'll let you guys know. But again, that's sort of one of those things that we want to keep the ball rolling on too, and then we'll have the information and we'll know what we're dealing with.
Does anybody have questions for Ryan?
May I correct something? I know it's not public comment, but the statement you made about Stacy Kraft, I live in Basalt. Ryan was referencing an email that I was copied onto from Rick LaFaro, and he had contacted a hydrologist to just look at Google Earth and give an assessment. This man had not seen the video, which there's substantial environmental damage up there. I mean, rocks this size were carried down. CPW's plowed all that away now, so you can't see it, but it's in the video. This hydrologist assessment was erroneous because he didn't realize that on the private side of the shooting range where the shooting club is shooting, they're shooting directly over a spring. Perry Will has told Cindy and I that area is full of lead, and this man that did the hydrology assessment based on Google Earth didn't realize where people were shooting. He thought people were shooting on, there's a little table mesa up there where the Roaring Fork Valley Shooting Association start shooting, but they shoot over the spring. That lead does not stay on the table, and it's not cleaned up, and in fact it's in their lease with the CPW that they don't have to clean it up. So it's an erroneous assumption because that man had not done any site visits and had not viewed the actual evidence. The amount of waste that was carried down, and mud and rocks and casings and skeet clay. There's bright orange skeet clay all over there. I invited all of you guys to come and tour the range, and I got 2 takers from Jen and Ryan. So I'd be happy to show you up there, but I don't think we should rest assured that this hydrologist assessment is accurate at all, because it's not.
Thanks, Stacy.
Based on a site visit.
Feel free to get together
So,
with staff whenever you have
just
new
as a
information.
justification is, I think I made that pretty clear, that this gentleman gave his assessment, and despite his assessment, we still wanted to move forward with testing so that we had real data about it. And when the agency that is charged with the care of the health of our rivers in this watershed goes out and takes the ball to get this information, I pay attention to it, and I think that we can take it a step further, and we'll do that. But I don't think there's cause for making assumptions until we have the right information.
Thanks, Ryan. Okay, our next item is public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 15. An ordinance of the town approving a voluntary refund of over-collected revenues from the town's general operating mill levy for fiscal years 2016 to 2019. Ryan and Jeff, Christy is not here this evening.
We're going to call her.
Oh,
We're gonna
okay.
get her on.
Call her in her deathbed.
I told her to stay in her jammies. She's not feeling well.
The number you have dialed is not in service.
It's gotten really bad.
I did.
Oh. Did I write it down?
She doesn't want to be found. Do we have to dial 9 on this?
Do you want that mic moved?
Oh, yeah, you transfer.
Yeah, once he's done.
Please leave your message for
That's not Christie.
Do you want her cell phone?
I'm sure.
That's what I'm calling.
366, so.
Oh. 0529?
Oh, 529.
It's
You
not
want, try
showing up.
dialing long distance, do the one,
I'm trying to call you right now.
dial one, because she probably has a rifle number
9-1.
from the original.
Well, let me hang up and try to get you.
You're right. It might be.
Yeah.
Try the 1970, yeah.
What is this? That's actually old blood.
Okay, I'm here.
Great.
Hi, Christy. Okay, who's kicking this off? Okay.
I will take the lead on this.
Okay.
So, as you know, this is the second reading on an ordinance to approve a voluntary refund. I think most of the factual history on this is pretty well known at this point, but I will run through it quickly. The town's general operating budget is financed in part through a property tax, the general operating mill levy. There's never been voter approval for the general operating mill levy. In 1992, the state's voters approved Tabor, which said, amongst other things, that taxes, including a mill levy, cannot be increased without voter approval. In 1994, the town got voter approval to retain all revenue that is generated from its property tax and from its sales tax. That ballot question did not approve the rate, it approved the revenue. And so over time, the town, through the town council, adjusted and set the mill levy down. Eventually, the rate was changed and was lowered over time, and then eventually was raised over time. And so for those raises, there was not any specific voter approval that occurred. As a result, it creates a Tabor obligation, and this was discovered over this past year. So it creates the question of what to do about the rate and what to do about the revenue in relation to the general operating mill levy. So as for the rate, which is not the subject of this ordinance, council had directed staff prepare a resolution to place a question on the ballot for this fall to seek voter approval for the rate. And that's a resolution that will come back at the next council meeting. As to the revenue, there were a few different options. The first would be to voluntarily refund the money. And as to what that amount is, it would be the liability under Tabor is the difference between the amount collected under at the rate that was set, the difference between that and what could have been collected at the rate at which it was lowest set. So as to that revenue piece, the options were to either provide a voluntary refund, seek voter approval to retain that revenue, or potentially do nothing and see what potential legal action might be taken. So the council directed to pursue a voluntary refund, and then the question is, well, what form, the question is, what form does that refund take? And there are a few options. Tabor says that you can refund the money through any reasonable method. It says that that it is, if it's impractical to ascertain like the dollar for dollar where the money goes, you don't need to do that. So one option is to provide for a temporary property tax credit. That's something that would run to current owners of property by temporarily reducing their property tax. Another way to do it, it would be to provide for a direct payment of a refund through a check. And that was the option that council directed, and that's what's reflected in this ordinance. So with that, with this approval, it would, again, it's a voluntary refund of this revenue amount. It would authorize the town to staff to hire or to go about rendering this refund through issuing checks. Those checks would include on them an option for persons receiving them to gift back the money to the town, potentially for a specific purpose. That's an issue that the town staff we're going to continue to explore, and it's something that we've seen done in other communities. The checks will also be sent to property owners, current property owners, as of the effective date of this ordinance. And again, that's a methodology that's supported by Tabor and its case law, and in looking at alternatives to that, it would create an unreasonable administrative burden on not only staff, but also increase the costs of rendering the refund. And this ordinance then ties into a couple others that are on the agenda, but in terms of timing, it'll probably take Ryan a couple of months once we have the appropriate consultant in place to help the town in terms of issuing the checks and getting those out. So that is the background. This is second reading. It's also a public hearing, so there should be public comment taken on this. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Conklin. Did you have anything to add?
No, he was kind of looking at me on the time frame, and what we're hoping for is October sometime to be able to issue those checks.
So this is public hearing. It is open. Anyone who wants to come up and speak regarding this issue, please do so now. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and go to council for questions or motion.
Mayor, I move the town council adopt ordinance number 15, series of 2019 on second reading.
Second.
Further discussion? Yes, ma'am.
I know that we're gonna go through the next few, and I have questions regarding the future budgeting and how I guess I should wait until item 6B to ask questions about future budget implications, but I feel a little awkward about voting on second reading.
Well, if you want clarity now, that's fine.
Okay, may I ask? Okay, so I have some questions regarding, in previous discussions, we had requested from staff how the COPs will affect future budgeting. And I haven't seen, except for in this packet, a breakdown of what the costs will be annually and what funds they will affect. And was just looking for more information on that.
Sure. So and Christy can speak to this as well, but I think that the annual costs that we're looking at for repayment are somewhere around $250,000 a year, and that comes out of our unrestricted general fund. So it's our operating funds that we'd be looking at. Did you have?
So from I see that in item 6C, it's being proposed that the Tabor take over the affordable housing line of credit-ish.
Oh, yes, right.
And so is it a similar amount, and did the affordable housing line of credit come from the general fund?
It did.
Okay.
Yes, and so the third item you're seeing is an ordinance to have a supplemental appropriation on our budget.
Right.
And really, those two items, we're asking for a supplemental appropriation to be able to approve expenditures in this year's budget that were contemplated when we originally approved the budget. Those aren't related. We just happen to have sold the Snowmass property, and we're wanting to move that ahead and start paying down that line of credit. But those would be from the same pots of money, yes. And so we're kind of trading one for another in essence.
Okay. I had a...
Yeah, and, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Christy.
Oh, the only thing I was going to add to Ryan is when we did put together the supplemental budget, we did so in a way that was trying to be very transparent in how those monies are flowing with those two different transactions, to make sure everybody could completely understand the impact to the fund balance and the health of the organization as it relates to these two transactions taking place.
Great, yeah, and that's what I saw Exhibit A and how that plays out. And what I'm looking to do is educate myself so that I can explain to citizens who have asked me, Jen, I thought that with the refund that it would affect town services. So what services are being affected and how does that reflect in the budget? And I don't have any piece of paper that I can show to them, and so I'm looking to be educated in that and asking that maybe we can have that for the second reading for items 6B and 6C.
Yeah, so the, just briefly on the services, you know, we'll have to get to that when we actually start creating our budget. You know, the service that we were essentially providing as we were carrying, you know, debt on the affordable housing was trying to find additional affordable housing, addressing a need in the community. As we retire that debt, you know, theoretically, you'd free up that money for provision of services, bolstering something in one area or another, and we won't do that as we you know, pay off this debt over the next 10 years. The other side of that is also the mill levy. So the mill levy is a bigger question, and if you know, we'll forward that to the voters, and we're assuming that gets voted in and hoping for that. And the reason for that is a larger hit. So that's nearly 600,000 additional out of our budget. And so that is when you have to really sharpen your pencil. And I can't tell you today where we'd be reducing. We're going to need, you know, we have staff getting us their budgets by the 24th of this month. We're meeting with council on the 27th. And then, you know, I think we'll have information from the election in November before we vote, and you know, we may even try to do like a little supplemental or what if budget should the voters not approve a mill levy to keep where it is today.
Perfect, that's exactly the information and the transparency and the simple explanation that I
Yeah,
was looking
it's
for.
really good to talk about too, because there's really two impacts to the budget. One is the 250,000 per year in the Tabor refund, and the second, as Ryan was noting, is the mill levy for 570,000. So the second being the most impactful to our budget, and you know, that way.
Great, thank you, Christy.
Thank you
Okay.
for the question. So we have a motion and a second, I believe. Is any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Okay, thank you, guys. Next one is public hearing and second reading of ordinance 16, an ordinance of the town authorizing the financing of a voluntary refund of overcollected revenues. Sounds like I'm reading the same thing. No, I moved on. Voluntary refund of overcollected revenues from the town's general operating mill levy for fiscal years 2016 to 2019, and in connection therewith authorizing the sale and subsequent leasing of certain town property and the execution and delivery by the town of a deed, a lease purchase agreement, and other documents related to the financing. Ryan, Christie, Jeff, whomever.
I'll take the lead on this one again. This is the second reading of the how do we pay for the refund ordinance, and the what's proposed is a municipal finance mechanism called lease certificates of participation, where the town would effectively convey some property to be held by a trustee that it then leases back. And as part of that, that allows for an upfront influx of cash that town would have to then pay back through those lease payments. That would also accumulate interest. Here, the town property that would be pledged would be the Public Works facility, and the ordinance also authorizes that some additional property could be included in that, in particular a couple of affordable housing units, if in part of the negotiations with investors that's deemed necessary, and it grants Ryan the authority to make those determinations. That's my summary and introduction of the ordinance. It's also a public hearing, so just a reminder to take public comment.
Okay, so we will open the public hearing at 6:45. Is there anybody that has any comments regarding this? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, go to council for questions or motion. Yes, ma'am.
So, Section 3 Supplemental Act Parameters. This is so loud. The council hereby elects to apply all of the Supplemental Act of the lease and in connection therewith delegates to any of the mayor. Just maybe a little typo there. I'm just pointing it out since it's second reading.
Where are you looking? Page?
Section 3, page 3.
Yeah.
I think the intent of the language is to provide the separate authority to either of those persons to take the action.
I just don't know if it's a little bit of a typo and we just have to clarify it since this is such a significant document. Just throwing it out there.
Hey, Katie, this is Christy. So the parameters that they're shown in the ordinance are just part of this, that give us the authority to go out into the market, and to various banks, and within those parameters, be able to, approve the funding. But we're working diligently to make sure to minimize that to the town, and we still hope, as far as, and we're going to work as diligently as possible to make that under $250,000 if at all possible and we believe that's totally possible with the current interest rates that we're seeing in the market right now.
I think she's talking about the language.
Hey, I get it. It's just confusing language, and then there's that extra space, which makes it seem.
You could take out any of.
Okay.
And just say to the mayor, town manager, or the finance director, and then I think
Shall we do that?
Okay.
That does
Clear enough.
seem less awkward.
Sorry to be so picky.
No, it's
it just like jumped out at me as
Yeah.
potential confusion.
You have a problem with that? I mean, is that
Nope,
not?
I
Is
think
that
that's
okay?
fine. Yep.
Anyone else? Yes.
A quick question. In previous iterations, it had been mentioned town hall.
Yep.
Can you educate us on the choice of properties?
Sure. So as it relates to the town hall, and I may need Jeff's assistance here a little bit, but the land that the town hall sits on has a reverter that, essentially if it has to be used for a public purpose. And so I think when you put it into this lease purchase arrangement, a bank's going to be less likely to take that risk of it reverting to them if in fact it limits their uses if they get it, if it has to be public. And so we don't have those same parameters on the Public Works building or a couple of our affordable housing units. So it was just a matter of practicality as it related to the land issue.
Yeah, that's right. There was a thought there might be potential concern from investors with the town hall property. So rather than try to spend time and money trying to fight through those, using collateral that would be more straightforward with the investors.
Sure. And if it does come to some of the affordable housing units, which would be?
Good question.
Sure.
So the ones that didn't have deed restrictions on them, so the unit that we have in Elk Run Villas, so the one there, and then
The Lakeside Townhome unit.
Lakeside Town.
Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying that.
Sure.
Any other questions or a motion?
Mayor, I move the town council adopt ordinance number 16, series of 2019 with the correction made by Katie
Okay.
on second reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. 6C is first reading of ordinance 17, an ordinance of the town providing for a supplemental appropriation for the year ending December 31, 2019, related to the voluntary refund of overcollected revenues from the town's general operating mill levy and repayment of the affordable housing line of credit. Christy, Jeff?
So I'll jump in. I kind of explained
Sorry, your
it.
name is not listed
Oh,
here,
it's
sir.
not. Oh, wow. Could I be your proxy for a second there, Christy? So I'll let her jump in on any detail, but I think I more or less kind of described it that when you adopt your budget, you set out a certain spending authority. By taking in this money and doing the refund, we have to acknowledge that new amount. And as well, the new amount that would be associated with the sale of the Shining Mountain property, Shining Mountain Way property up in Old Snowmass. So we can use that money to pay down the affordable housing line of credit. The reason we want to do that now instead of waiting till the end of the year, we're just accruing interest, so it gets, it reduces that interest. And then this is, we just have to get the ball rolling so that once we get those, the money from the COPs, that we would have authority to spend it, to give it back to the residents.
Oh, nice cough, Christy. So this is not a public hearing, but are there questions or comments from council on 6C or a motion?
Mayor, I move the town council approve ordinance number 17, series of 2019 on first reading and set the public hearing and second reading for August 20th, 2019.
27th, sorry, that's a typo.
Oh,
Mayor, I move the town council approve ordinance number 27, right? Is that what you're saying?
No, August 27th.
August
August
27th,
27th,
sorry.
yes, sorry.
Mayor, I move the town council approve ordinance number 17, series of 2019 on first reading and set the public hearing and second reading for August 27th, 2019.
Thank you, Ryan.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, everyone.
Okay, Christy, I'll hang up.
Thanks, Christy.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Feel better.
Thank you.
Feel better.
Okay, thank
Don't
you.
come
I
back
am.
to
I'm
your
gonna feel
well.
better.
Okay.
Go to bed.
See
Stay
ya.
there.
Okay, bye.
Bye. And then I should go to bed as well. Okay, 6D, public hearing and second reading of ordinance 14 of 2019, an ordinance of the town amending Chapter 7, Article 7, related to the town's dog leash laws. Ryan, Greg, Jeff.
Yeah, so I'll just jump in on this one briefly. We've talked about it at the last meeting, which was to come up with some ideas for the town where we can better enforce the leash laws, but also give folks an opportunity or an area where they could have their dogs be off leash. And so we'd have to come back. This does not identify those areas or give carte blanche. You'd have to come back with an ordinance identifying those. So that would be a next step for us, but this just acknowledges in our municipal code that we can identify off-leash areas, and that's basically the intent of what we're trying to do. I think Chief Knott had provided a memo in the past just on some of the issues we've had around it and kind of why we're bringing this forward now, and trying to come up with a practical solution that works for the community.
Did you have anything else, Chief? Or actually, Jeff? Do you have anything else?
I think Ryan stated it well. We'll be working on an ordinance related to which areas might be then designated as leash-free zones.
Excellent. Okay, this is a public hearing, and it is open for comments right now. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, again, my name is Toni Kronberg, and it's really exciting to see everything cleared up, but I have an ask, and that is when the next ordinance comes forward to identify the areas where dogs can be off leash, one of the great benefits of Crown Mountain Park is the fenced-in doggy area, so that dogs who you really can't control, that they have a safe place to run around. And in a lot of the Crown Mountain Park, they have a large dog area and a small dog area. And I just wanted to put that out to the council. If you could fit it into your budget, you already have the land in a lot of different places. You just have to put up some chain link fencing with some gates. But a lot of people from Basalt make the drive down to Crown Mountain Park, and Crown Mountain Park is being overwhelmed with dogs. And I think, one, it would take off some of the pressure for Crown Mountain Park, but then also would make Basalt, people who have their dogs that they want to run, but they don't trust them, that they're gonna stay right by the owner, that they have a safe place for their dogs to be. And one area that I see a lot of people walking their dogs is that great trail over there by the new America housing that you put in. Between that and the put into the river, people throw balls for their dogs and they run. I don't know who owns that property over there. Or you have Albany Park. I mean, there's just a lot of different areas. But I think it would be one of the nice, like, little benefits for people in Basalt.
Good thought, Tony. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Greg Gordon. I've lived in the South Side since 2010 and have had a dog for most of that time. Sort of echoing what Tony just said, at least at Southside Park, one of the things that I saw, especially when my dog was a puppy, when the dogs start playing in that park, and frankly, very often dogs were off leash and have been off leash there for a long time, they start getting excited, and then somebody who doesn't want their dog to play with other dogs just innocently walks by with a leash across the street, say from Southside Park, and all the dogs go over and do a greeting party and run across the street and say hi. So to the extent we do these areas where there's going to be off leash, if it's feasible to put in a fence, like specifically Southside, to enclose the entire park with the kind of fence that's along, I guess, the west side would be great. I think a lot more people would use it. I know I've stopped using Southside because of that. I just didn't want to have the interaction with people who didn't want their dogs getting a greeting. So to the extent it's feasible, just wanted to make that point, that I think it would really encourage people to use. I know Southside and any other areas that are being considered, to the extent they could be fenced in a little bit, I think would be really helpful.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else? Okay, we're going to close the public hearing and go to council for questions, comments, motion. Yes, ma'am.
I would love to see, when we do come back with the ordinance, something that I have requested from Ryan is the comparable numbers from other municipalities regarding the number of dog bites, calls, dogs at large over periods of time, and I recognize that I requested that previously with not enough lead time to get it, but if you do have that information, I think it would be really great to include in the record and somehow state to the public where we are in the spectrum.
Really local.
Thanks, Jen. Anybody else, or is there a motion?
Motion if there are no additional questions. To approve ordinance number 14, series of 2019 on first reading and set the public hearing and second reading for August 27th, 2019.
So it's actually, isn't this a whole typo?
It's an error on the agenda. It should just say approve on second reading.
All right, we'll approve it on second. I motion to approve this on second reading, ordinance number 14, 2019.
Oh, yeah, this is already a second reading. Okay, thank you very much. Did we get a second? Or was that the second?
That was the first.
Second.
Thank you very much. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, guys. Okay, 6E, first reading of ordinance number 18, an ordinance of the town amending chapter 16 zoning of the municipal code to provide for the regulation of wireless communications facilities in the town. Jeff, Susan.
Okay. This is going to be a bit of a dense topic, so
Ew.
just preparing you.
Can you undensify it in some way?
So this is an ordinance related to the regulation of wireless communication facilities and the related deployment of 5G technology. So I'm going to talk about three things. One, what are wireless communication facilities? Two, why is this in front of you? And then three, what exactly does this ordinance do? So wireless communication facilities are, they break 10 minutes ago. They break down into four categories. There are your traditional towers, your alternative tower structures, which are things that are like fake towers. You know, they'll be trees, cactuses, you know, or like kind of more innocuous looking poles. The other category is small cell facilities, and small cell facilities are really what are helping deploy 5G technology in our kind of like generally like a 3-foot cubic dimension box, and within that it contains all the communication equipment, and you'll see them mounted to these alternative tower structures or on sides of buildings or on roofs or places like that. And then the fourth category is called a base station, and a base station is an uglier version of a small cell facility. It's a more obtrusive tower, or a more obtrusive antenna-looking structure, but is generally a bit smaller. So those are the types of wireless communication facilities. So then, you know, why is this here? So the FCC adopted an order earlier this year in an effort to help facilitate the rollout of 5G technology and to help promote the development of these smaller scale infrastructure projects where you're going to need to locate a lot of these things around to create a communication network. And so I guess there I'll step back and say, instead of a tower type structure, and this is layperson's perspective or understanding, but instead of a tower structure where a signal is being broadcast more in a downward direction, with small cell facilities that are located on tops of buildings, it creates this clustered network that branches out more horizontally. So in an effort to allow for that type of rollout, the FCC adopted an order that preempted state and local law to do primarily three things. One, it said that small cell facilities, the more box structures, have to be a permitted use in all zone districts. It also said that small cell facilities, alternative tower structures, and base stations, so everything but towers, are permitted uses within rights of way. And then the third thing it did was it created a shot clock on the processing of an application to deploy one of these things. So in an effort to speed things along, the FCC said from the time an application is filed to deploy one of these, the local jurisdiction, you have 90 days to come up with a final decision on a new application, or else it's automatically approved. And if it's going to be a modification of an existing facility, you have 60 days. And that's kind of in an effort to encourage using existing infrastructure. So now we're to, what does this ordinance look like? Well, this ordinance is to address kind of that FCC order and mandate, because we need to set up a regulatory structure to, so that we're ready in the event that there's an application related to one of these wireless communication facilities, so we don't run into shot clock issues, and so that we're positioned to ensure that we are getting the best wireless communication facility aesthetically possible in those cases, and that there's not impacts. So the ordinance in front of you does a few things. One is, you can tell from this introduction, there are a lot of terms of art related to this topic. So there are a number of definitions that really come from the FCC that need to be incorporated into the code so that we're referring to things correctly and properly regulating them. The second thing it does is it amends the zoning code to comply with the FCC order. And so we're really talking about 8 categories of uses. There's the 4 sub-parts of wireless communication facilities: towers, alternative tower structures, base stations, and small cell facilities. And then it's whether they're located in the right-of-way or not in the right-of-way. So the zoning code amendment makes the permitted uses permitted where they need to be based on this FCC order, makes all of the other uses special uses, so that there's some additional oversight as to those. And then towers are prohibited in all zone districts except for the developing resource zone district, where they would be considered a special use.
So interesting.
Yep. I'm just getting warmed up. So,
Okay, all right.
so here's the meat of it. The meat of it is that, yes, the FCC says you have to permit these things, but they can be subject to design standards. These are non-discretionary things that will help mitigate the visual impacts. They involve things like camouflaging, siting, co-locating these facilities, height restrictions, how they can be located on buildings. So this ordinance includes design standards that relate to all of these things, and then specific design standards to each of the 4 types of wireless communication facility. It also, the next phase of that is for the things that are considered special uses, creates special use review standards. These are discretionary criteria as opposed to the design standards. More discretionary criteria where a reviewing body can make some more judgment call as to what might be appropriate and what might not be. And so those review standards are specifically included in reference to each one of those categories. And then the next thing that this ordinance does is it creates a process. So based on this shot clock mandate, we need to have a process in place to ensure that these applications are timely processed. So for things that are permitted uses, it allows for approval by the TRC, the Technical Review Committee, that's comprised of department heads and me, and to review that there's compliance with these development review, or these design review criteria and the other general provisions that relate to relate to these wireless communication facilities. It also, the second process is for special use review. So normally, a special use, if you were to apply for it, there's no way it gets processed within 90 days because it goes to P&Z, then gets referred to town council, and there's 2 readings on an ordinance. So this delegates the authority to have the Planning and Zoning Commission be the final decision maker with respect to special use review applications, and then gives an option for an appeal to town council. So that's, I don't know if that exact procedure is used in any other types of review, but I know there's, Susan, I'll let you talk about this because I know there's some other types of delegated review somewhat akin to that. So that's the process change that is set out in here. A few other things that I'll quickly hit on, I'm still under 10 minutes I think, is you know, the applicant, when a wireless infrastructure provider comes in with an application, they have to have a site plan, they have to show that they have a license with wherever they're gonna put, with the person who owns wherever they're gonna put this. So say it's a building over in Willits, there'd be a license to allow them to locate it on the roof. They'd have to show an inventory of where all the other sites are within the plan and where they're anticipated to be. If applicable, a geotech report, there's gonna be photographs. And then upon approval, there's a requirement, and this was the recommendation of the P&Z that was added to the ordinance from when this was in front of the P&Z, that there be on an annual basis, an emissions report submitted to the town to make sure that they're in compliance with regulations related to that, and there's also a more broad compliance report that's required to be submitted as well.
Which is awesome.
And this is something that all, you know, cities and towns are dealing with. I know there was a few articles in the paper recently related to how Aspen has been dealing with this issue. They have regulations that are on the books that they adopted not too long ago that are pretty similar to this. These are similar to what's also being implemented around the state. And I know Aspen is hiring another consultant to come in and come up with a real specific plan for within their jurisdiction. But this is something that the town needs to have on its books to ensure that we're ready in the event that a wireless infrastructure provider comes into town looking to install some infrastructure, and so we can review it, make sure the impacts are mitigated to the extent possible, and make sure that something doesn't inadvertently get approved because we don't have the process in place. And so with that, Susan, I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to address.
No, I just want to say that Jeff came to to 2 of the P&Z meetings, which was extremely helpful. So the P&Z spent quite a bit of time trying to get a handle on this. The P&Z was also interested in not having a long extended rights period, so that's kind of built, a 9-month period is kind of built into the ordinance. And just to maybe state that we had the kind of the advantage that we're almost the last community in the Roaring Fork Valley to adopt this, so we were able to look at what the other jurisdictions like Aspen and Carbondale and Glenwood had done. And the P&Z also, and this isn't embedded in the ordinance because we don't want it embedded in the ordinance, but they wanted the opportunity to kind of revisit it in 6 months and kind of see if additional changes were necessary. They're kind of recognizing that we're more vulnerable not having anything on the books, and I think that's why they felt comfortable kind of moving ahead. Staff had heard from a local resident who was particularly concerned with the health benefits, and that's why they added that condition that also appeared in the tower tree that we had put in the Willits Town Center.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Thanks, guys. This is a first reading, so we will take comments next time at the second reading, but are there questions or comments from council? Jen?
So I'm so excited Jeff, you did a great presentation, and this is actually one of my pet projects that I brought to Ryan a while ago, recognizing that we need to protect our town right-of-ways from clutter, because the 5G can create a lot of additional just electronic junk. Think about tripping on the wires in your house, and I just don't want our town to go down that route, and for us to maintain our nice small town and clean lines and Willets. So I'm really grateful for the time that you all put into this, and as well, I'm really grateful for the P&Z and their additional request to have annual safety monitoring to ensure the health and wellness of our citizens and guests. And with that, I move
So hoping.
that council approve ordinance number 18, series of 2019 on first reading, and set the public hearing and second reading for August 27th, 2019.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, Jeff. Let's talk about that over a drink sometime. Or not. Or not, okay. Resolution 27 is our next item, a resolution of the town amending the town's policies for special events. Now, this is gonna be exciting because it's Watkins Gray.
Hope so. Hope it's exciting. We have had numerous requests for special events this year on the streets that are in question with this resolution. And those streets are Robinson between East Valley Road and Harris Street, so adjacent there to Triangle Park, as well as Market Street between East Valley Road and Grange. And so, since we've had a lot of requests and we've been closing these over the years for events, in an effort to be more nimble and as well as provide high-quality customer service to the town, we're proposing to allow for these streets to be able to be closed administratively with the TRC that Jeff was referencing, the Technical Review Committee. And so we think that'll help us be able to react faster to special events and review them quicker, as well as take less time of yours in the consent agenda. So that's about all I have, but I'm happy to take any questions.
It's very exciting to hear the word nimble in a presentation, so thank you, Watkins. And I will turn to council for any questions or comments regarding this idea. I think it's great myself. Betty, anybody?
I agree. I also think it's great. I've had a lot of requests on stuff like this, so thank you for
And therefore,
bringing this up. Therefore, Mayor, I move the town council approve resolution 27, series of 2019.
is there a second? Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Watkins.
Some things just make sense, right? Okay, 6G, a resolution of the Town Council of Basalt approving amendments to the town's capital improvements plan for 2019 through 2023 for post projects. Susan, Phil.
Yes, and I think that Ryan wants to say a couple introductory.
I'm gonna jump in.
Your
a
name,
little bit.
once again, is not listed
There,
as
we'll
a
have
speaker.
to make sure
Okay.
we're a little more careful about that. But as we had talked about, made it a practice when we're just kind of getting through the year and getting our projects bid and whatnot, as they come back, you know, our crystal ball doesn't always work as well as we hope, and so we bring projects back to you just to make sure we have authority to move ahead with a project when it comes back and it's not within the budget or within the anticipated budget. So really, we're just looking at the CIP for 2019, and in particular, I'm going to concentrate for a second on the sidewalk project that would connect the Spring Creek Bridge, otherwise known as the Bridge to Nowhere, to the newly finished sidewalk as of last year at the Roaring Fork Conservancy building. So we basically complete a loop there. This is a pretty technical build on this sidewalk. It's not just as easy as laying down some gravel road base and paving over it, it's going to require some retaining walls and whatnot. And so that's kind of making it more expensive, the addition of a handrail, things along those lines. So where the rubber meets the road is that we're not asking for an increase in expenditure like we had just done with the supplemental appropriation, but we're sort of shifting money around within the post budget. And so basically with the Spring Creek Bridge project, we would like to add $169,516 to that. We had originally anticipated $285,420, and that was done through an engineer's estimate, and sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. In this case, they didn't. We did have 2 bids on that. We had expected a couple more, and we're hoping for a couple more, but they just didn't come through. So the procurement policy does allow us to negotiate with the low bidder, and that's what we went back and did, and tried to value engineer the project so we could still move ahead. So that's one component of what we're doing. The other 2 additions would be to add $25,000 each to the Albany Park design project, as well as the Basalt River Park design project. So the Basalt River Park design project, we don't have an overage at this point in time, but we just wanted to anticipate that should that come up. If there are more public meetings around that, that's kind of where we would get some added costs. So we have been progressing on that, and Susan included in the, my Friday report last week, where we were with that project. So it just gives us a little bit more cushion. But as it relates to the Albany Park project, which is on tonight's agenda as well, we did bid that out. We got 2 bidders on that, and the price came back what it came back. And so we feel like this, the $75,000 there total gives us the ability to do a good job on that design in Albany. And then we added $15,000 to the miscellaneous projects in there. So all in all,
No, that was just, no, it was more than
Sorry?
that. It was actually more than that. 15,000 was just because the Basalt River Park cost was significantly down. We used the price that was in the budget, and then we,
no, but I'm referring to miscellaneous projects, which for 2019 was 35 here, right?
no, it was 10, so it was.
No, 10. So did I do my math wrong?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
10,
yeah.
so 25?
Mhm.
25, excuse me, not 15.
See why Susan's name was on there?
Yes, that's right. So the source of the money, what are we shuffling around? So as you know, we've gone through the first iteration with negotiating on a sketch plan approval for the purchase of the land over across the street. We're not certain that we'll be able to make that purchase, though we're gonna try our darndest as it relates to, the applicant getting their application in and going through the appropriate process, but should we not, we'll have to rebudget for that piece. But through the first negotiation, we were able to get that purchase price down. And so really we're taking that excess in there and just shifting it over to these projects for this year. So I think in a nutshell, that's where we are. Susan, you wanna add to?
No, I think you're ahead.
Anybody have questions on comments regarding this? Yes, Jen.
So I was under the impression in the first go around that the sidewalk would be on the other side of the road where the shoulder is a little wider, etc. Maybe no metal handrails were required. Tell me more.
Sure. So basically we're trying to, if we can keep people from having to cross the street unnecessarily,
Exactly.
I think that's a better safety enhancement. And so you can kind of keep that loop just around the confines of the Basalt River Park. It may be that eventually we'd want to continue that sidewalk on that side, but I think there's been at least preliminary discussions to run a sidewalk eventually up Homestead on that, what is the county-owned road there. But, so there may or may not need to be a sidewalk on that far side, because people could just cross at the Roaring Fork Conservancy and then, get down to where the Homestead, project would take off. One of the things we value engineered out of this, which, for now I think works, is we had a concrete, crosswalk, through that area. Today it's striped. I think we'd just go back to striping for now. There is not a receiving sidewalk on the other end, so I think we'd be okay with that. But that was sort of the general thinking, for that section is, especially if it's youngsters that, are being squirrely, that, you don't have to cross the road.
Sure. Thanks for explaining.
Okey dokey, yes, Gary.
I had a question. In this, I read that these are capital improvement projects and they're subject to the 1% to the arts.
That's in
How do
there.
you do that with a restricted fund?
Well, I did have that question as well, this afternoon. And my thought, and Jeff might want to chime in on it, because technically the 1% for arts wasn't approved under the post money, right? So either you take it out of general fund, or if it's art that's within the park and is part and parcel to the park, then perhaps that's an okay expenditure within within the post confines.
Jeff?
I think Ryan explained it about as well as I could, what the options might be there.
Legally?
And, I guess to the extent that there are more specific questions as to that use, I would need to take a closer look at it.
And you could approve that with a condition that we do, a legal study on it, and then give me the authority to make that call based on Jeff's conclusion, if that works.
Susan?
Well, I think overall, we should look at the 1% for public art process, not keep it separate from this
Not just for
project.
this, right.
Because we do have another funding source, because we have the Arts RETA that comes from Parcel 4C and 4D. So in the past, what we did is we didn't use general fund money to backfill it. We used money from that fund itself. So it was a restricted fund for arts. So we didn't take it from the general fund. That was kind of the theory. So I kind of think overall, we should maybe come back with the 1% for public art. It was done, in 2016, and it's been a little clunky in terms of, how we account for it and everything. So I think the whole thing kind of needs a look, not on this project specifically. I don't know that you can waive it under the ordinance. There's language that kind of says, but for, that the project wouldn't happen if you did the 1%, which I think the town manager has the ability to make that call. So we made that call by way of example on the underpass. The Basalt Avenue underpass is a capital project, and that amount would have been so much. So on this one, I guess you could have that motion, and the town manager could end up waiving it under that provision that the project wouldn't happen.
Well, does it seem like what Susan's saying is right, that we maybe need to bring this back and look at it as the whole 1%, not just this?
Yeah, I think we wouldn't bring it back.
Not for this.
For this,
No.
yes, but
But
as
bring
the
back
whole, as a
the whole-
policy issue,
yeah.
yeah, probably.
Can somebody just make sure that happens?
Yep.
Well, my big question on it is, these are restricted funds that were approved by voters, and using it for something other than what the voters approved it for usually doesn't work. So using it, I know how you can mix it by doing it, but the sidewalk project, how are you gonna say there's art included in a sidewalk project?
So can
Where
I
on a
get
park project, I can understand it.
Well,
You
I
don't
think,
have to do it on that
Can you
project.
yeah, you don't have to do it on that project, yeah.
Remind me that this 1% was approved by the voters?
No.
No,
No, it wasn't. Okay.
It's just a policy.
I'm
1%
talking about the
Open
tax,
space.
the open space tax, 1%.
Correct.
That
That
was
is.
approved by the voters, and so that's what my question is, the restricted funds that were approved by the voters, can they be used for
Yeah,
other
but that's what I
uses?
said, we'll go back
And I understand in a park project, we're gonna mix art in, and that is, to me, acceptable, but for other projects, not so much.
And it would, like, so with this, we wouldn't, just to clarify, we wouldn't put art on that, and that's, the policy basically says you take the 1% and then you just fill, this restricted account, and then over time, you spend that on art wherever. We would have to do in this restricted account an earmark on that 1%, perhaps, that, and this one has to be spent in a park because it was, from post. But let's just make sure that that's a fair.
And as a general matter, what you're saying is correct. So if there with relation to the arts, 1% for the arts funds, if we need to have any motion here to include some additional authority granted with Ryan to ensure that there's not any trip up with use of a restricted fund, I think we could include that in the motion.
Okay. I'm happy about that, because with all the Tabor stuff and everything else we have done, I
Yeah.
don't want us to run into any more hiccups with use of funds and stuff like that.
So are you suggesting that this motion in front of us be changed?
This motion is only on the first motion, which is you only offer, open 6G. The first
6G.
motion is just to amend the parks, the CIP. And so that one can stand on its own. We still have a couple comments to make when you get to 6H, which is actually authorizing the project itself.
Okay, so
Okay.
maybe we should do 6G. Are we ready to move forward on 6G?
I have a comment that does relate to 6H as well. I'm on board with a sidewalk, but I don't want it $160,000 more badly. And it just, it's a, how far of a distance? It's not even half mile.
No. 500 feet maybe?
It's like, kinda like it's a lot of money for a very short distance.
Well, I was wondering,
What we just pay for right now, construction prices are monstrous and they're just going up.
mhm.
I'm not, it is what it is, and if we wanna get it done, if we're gonna do it, now's the time to do it, cause otherwise it's gonna be, if we're gonna do some type of connection, I just look at it going, we better do it now, cause it's just gonna cost more.
And I think we
think
do need to do this,
strategically,
because when that bridge to nowhere was built, that was not cheap, and it has been a bridge to nowhere, or just tossed out into the roadway, a roadway that's getting faster and faster and busier all the time. I really think we need to get it done. I agree with Gary that everything's, I hate to use the phrase, out of control, but it's expensive, and you can't there's no competition, and, I mean.
So that's what my point is that I wanna bring up is, I strategically think 12 months out, and there are a lot of signs that there is recession. And how I handle my personal finances, if I think that it's gonna be on sale, I'm gonna wait a little bit. And that's all that I just wanna bring to this council, and I wanna be heard to make that statement, that I'd rather wait for this to go on sale. I don't want it at this really expensive price.
Sometimes we wait for 30 years for things to go on sale. Okay, so where are we on 6G? Did we ever get a motion?
6G,
Any
I make a
questions?
motion that the council approve resolution 28, series of 2019.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Is there further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Good job. Okay, 6H, Resolution 29, a resolution of the town approving Two Rivers Road project and authorizing staff to enter into a contract with Heil Construction. Brian, Susan, you're on this one if you want to talk.
Oh, great, thank you. So yeah, this is just a follow-up and a complement to the previous agenda item. One thing I did get a last-minute change that to put into the motion, should you choose to approve it, would be a change in section 2, that the project would be completed by November 1st. They can commit to December 1st. And The only issue usually that you run into as it relates to seasonality is with asphalt, and they believe that they're able to do the asphalt cut, right, and then pour concrete right up to it. So, so that late date in the year should be fine for them.
Why don't you just stop it at, the town manager is granted the authority to negotiate the project start and end dates, and then just take that date out, totally out.
Start and end dates, period.
Yeah.
That would be
And then the other change would be the reference to the,
So this is a contract, this resolution's awarding a contract to Heil Construction. They're based
Yes.
out of Newcastle. Newcastle is, well, under the procurement policy, there's a requirement that there be a local preference. Newcastle's not within the local preference area. There may, with the precise numbers, be some issue where there was another bidder that might have been within the local preference gap. However, the procurement policy allows for the town council to waive any provisions of the policy if reasonable under the circumstances. It's the recommendation of staff that this would be one of those circumstances. It's a cheaper price. They're effectively a local company. So one additional recommended amendment would be to approve this contract and waive section 5.2 of the procurement policy in doing so.
Okay.
And then, as a follow-up to our discussion on the last agenda item, there should also be an amendment to authorize the town manager to the extent necessary to waive restrictions on the use of the 1% for the arts fund, consistent with that policy. Is that, did I say
Yeah.
that accurately?
Consistent with the law.
Consistent with the law.
Okay. So we have, was it three different?
Three things. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Are we good on that?
I'm just gonna make a comment.
Yes.
I agree with Jen about the cost. It's really astronomical to consider almost $600,000 for a stretch of sidewalk. And I'm thinking about like the square footage cost. I'm also considering that I'm currently building a house, an entire house, for the same cost. So I'm just putting that out. I understand that construction costs are astronomical in our valley, but it is a little bit stunning to see this number. And I know it's not any of our control. I'm just stating what I think is kind of obvious to us all.
I personally think it's a safety issue, and I think it's been a safety issue for a very long time, dumping pedestrians out there, or not having the bridge used at all. So, I mean, as much as I agree with you, and if it was my checkbook, I would cry for days, I think that we have some responsibility to do this. I wish it wasn't this much, but I agree, but I have to support staff's position on this. But I guess let's have a motion, see what happens.
I want to put out there that I do support staff's position, and I do see the importance of this, and I suggest value engineering and having the sidewalk on the other side of the street where the construction costs would be less, possibly.
But the
You
only
could
thing is,
value engineer that.
And I'm not suggesting that we change the motion, I'm just throwing spaghetti out there.
I just think that, to move it to the other side of the street, I think how I picture this defeats the purpose of having people come off that bridge and then loop back around to town. They would still be crossing the highway then, which is what we're trying to avoid.
And there would be some retaining walls placed there too.
I walk out there almost every evening, and it's cool, there's people that ride their horses across the bridge. I mean, it is a utilized space, and people are gonna utilize it one way or another, and I just want to be conscientious of how we utilize our restricted funds and our monies.
I got you.
That's all that I'm putting.
Let's see how she hangs. Your motion.
Can I just ask one more question?
Sure.
This is borderline outrageous, but I'm asking it.
That would be.
Does it have to be paved? Can it be like a pervious structure that's of significantly less cost?
I don't think it's so much the cost of concrete that's really doing it. It's more the retainage and stuff to be able to hold back the material, whatever the material is. Because we actually did do a reduction on the thickness of the concrete, because it was 6 inches like where you have the retaining walls built, and they just carried that through, so we made a reduction and didn't really reduce it all that much for that. So that's sort of my explanation.
Well, and I can tell you that's not the reduction in cost. We do that all the time. We try to figure out if a crusher fine would work better, and it's not the asphalt cost. And so my question on the final bid number, at 348, that doesn't include any traffic control?
So the traffic control,
Would be, well, the traffic control is in addition to that we would do, Public Works would do it, because the traffic control actually came in rather high, so that's one of the points that we negotiated down with them, and were able to get that reduced pretty significantly.
You took so you're taking out that $117,000 for traffic control?
Yeah.
Which is listed in the packet in other places as 11,700. I was really confused by that one.
I think maybe that would be the new,
yeah, that's the
Price.
new
That's
one.
the new
Yeah.
price.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we included the original bid schedule.
Uh-huh.
So that's the
11,
page that looks like this.
great.
That's excellent value engineering, and I will provide kudos to that.
Okay, so many conversations at once, yes.
I have another question. Because of the water that is there, does an environmental impact need to be done? The construction that will be going into the Spring Creek, or what's?
no, we checked on that that was a consideration as, kind of before we got into this, and at least the direction we have today, and was that, we would effectively be staying out of the water.
SGM is super careful on that one. They don't want to get sued because it's their stamped drawings.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Yep.
okay. So, Mayor, I move that the town council approve resolution number 31, series of 2019.
30,
29.
It says it right here, 31.
29,
29.
29,
Oh, I'm reading
yeah.
29, sorry, I'm
It's
reading the
gotta
wrong
be
one.
29.
That was not staff's fault, that was my fault. So with the amendments that first we allow the town manager to adjust the budget adjust the timeframe of the contract as necessary. The second one was to deal with the potential legal issue for the 1% for the arts. And the third one was, to waive the local preference.
Good job, Gary. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Begrudgingly, yes.
Okay. Opposed?
Opposed.
All right, good conversation, guys. We're spending it like it's our own money, which is what we're supposed to do.
We should be.
That's
Yeah,
right.
That's
That's right.
Staff level
Jen
preference.
is always right there. Okay, 6I, boy, we don't get that far very often. Resolution 31, a resolution of the town authorizing the engagement of design and engineering services for the Albany Park Swimming Pool project with Connect One Design, Landscape Architecture, and Land Planning. I do not believe I have a resolution.
It wasn't in the original.
It wasn't.
Oh, you emailed it, okay, sorry.
Here.
No.
No.
No, I don't want it. Just say, oh,
Get
geez,
one and
that's,
don't want it.
that's a big fatty. Okay, I'll take it. Okay, so Ryan, Susan, or somebody.
Okay, so I'll start on this one. I think everybody knows that improvements to Albany Park have long been desired by the town of Basalt. A couple years ago, we hired Black Shack Architects and Terrain, who prepared kind of a master plan for Albany Park and include a phasing plan, and the first phase was making improvements to the Albany pool, the Albany swimming pool. So this year, we have those improvements included in our capital improvement plan to start the design work for the Albany Park swimming pool. We went out to, we sent out a request for proposals We had a very active pre-proposal meeting, although it was a non-mandatory one. We filmed it, had it available through Grassroots. We had a lot of interest in responding to the request for proposals, and we ended up getting 2 proposals from firms. The one was Connect One Design, who teamed with BG Building Works, Colorado Pool Design, Z Group Architecture, Sunsense Solar Design, and Albright Structural Engineers, and Blackjack Architects that went with Aceto Landscape Architects, Colorado Pool and Spa Radar Engineering, and Steve Eichhorst. We had a selection committee that was made up of the town manager, the planning director, assistant planning director, the pool manager, and 2 members of post that interviewed both teams. And we selected, the recommendation was to use Connect One Design. I really felt that they most comprehensively addressed the items that we asked for in the RFP. We have Elise Huddle here. She's going to be the project manager, working under the managing principal, who is Giles Thornley, who isn't able to come. A lot of the pool projects, it's really centered around the kiddie pool area. Under the work that we're trying to authorize tonight, there'd be 2 conceptual plans prepared for the kiddie pool, kind of keeping the functions that a kiddie pool is actually used for today, which is used for swimming lessons. There's some cosmetic improvements that are being made, removing the pool fence and replacing it with something more attractive. Improvements to the small minor improvements to the shower rooms, and also doing kind of a conceptual study of, can we get a family-friendly restroom in the pool area? One of the most important things is the thing that isn't very sexy, is really just looking at the mechanical, electrical, plumbing for the existing pool. The pool is the town's highest user of energy and contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. And so a lot of this exercise is to try to get the most efficient way of addressing the pool. We've had a couple other studies that were done by SGM and were done by CORE. So we have some ideas to kind of take forward. The infrastructure of the pool is really seeing its wear and tear. A lot of it is the original infrastructure that went with the pool. And so I think it's going to be interesting through this process of kind of what we uncover and what we find. Right now, we have funds budgeted for construction in 2020 for the pool improvements, and we'll see how far we can get with that budget. Elise Hull's here in case you have any questions. So we have a resolution in front of you that is authorizing us to enter into the contract.
Okey-doke. Council?
The questions I have are really, trying to, when you're doing the final design, I mean, I know I'm really happy that we're doing the environmental review of the pool. I think it's sexy. I mean, I'm sorry, but to me, trying to find ways to reduce the environmental footprint of the pool is huge to me. And I've seen other places do it, so I think we can do it too. But to me, overall, the functional use of the pool, it would be good to see how we can improve that a little bit. I mean, because yes, you're not just talking about the kiddie small pool, you're talking about the kids section in the pool itself. And so how that functions together will be really interesting to see how we can move together on that. So, I don't know if I have so much of a question. It says process timeline. I guess that's my question. Did you guys come up with a process timeline?
Yeah, do you want to take a stab at answering that, Elise?
Sure. So unfortunately, since this whole process got pushed back a little bit, we don't anticipate having any conceptual designs for the pool to show folks before the pool closes at Labor Day. So
Okay.
that's the bad news.
The good news, however, is we anticipate collecting email addresses and doing some outreach to the neighborhood and really making sure that we are reaching out to the folks that are actually using the pool, or also people that we would love to get them to use the pool as we move into the fall. So we're ready to move forward on this contract. You know, we could start next week with a kickoff meeting, assuming everybody was available, which is probably a lot to ask for. And then the contractor, BG Building Works, who will be doing the majority of the assessment of the mechanical engineering plumbing, they're ready to go. So we anticipate having them doing their assessment at the same time that we're looking at doing the conceptual designs for the kiddie pool. So probably, you know, we're just looking at a few months to get this out, like the initial assessment and conceptual designs done.
Okay. Can you put a big sign up on the fence going to the pool about this? 'Cause I
Yeah,
think
and Susan and I actually talked about that. And what we were anticipating is doing both like actual visual signage on the pool fencing, but also taking advantage of the existing Bang the Table software program that we've been using for the Basalt Master Plan, and creating a separate entry for that where people could see conceptual designs and leave comments and that sort of thing. So there'd be like sort of a virtual place to do that, as well as a physical place where that they could look at it. And that way we can still continue to collect information and feedback even though the pool is closed.
Yeah, and I think people will be confused by kiddie pool or the kiddie section of the pool. So just be aware of that. When you say kiddie pool, they think it's just a little box.
Yes, now, you know, I don't know if we need a clarification on that. We weren't, I think we'll have to get, that's a
'Cause you're
good
gonna hear
comment,
it.
because we weren't really envisioning on making very many changes to the pool except for the ADA access. So getting comments on the kiddie area and maybe making sure that we're defining which is which, but we weren't really.
Yeah, in the scope of the project, we included looking at the entire pool as a system.
Okay.
So not specifically the kiddie pool, but in terms of the conceptual design, the RFP asks for design specific to the kiddie pool. But obviously, we're not gonna look at that myopically. It'll be, you know, the whole synergy of the system.
When can we see conceptual?
I'm actually not a designer, so I don't want to speak for Giles and the rest of the team. But as I said originally to Gary, I anticipate that we'll have something to show within a few months.
Okay. Anybody else? Jen?
I have a question for, having sat in on a lot of the post plans and seeing previous conceptual designs, and there had been a splash pad, et cetera. And in this go around and looking at the post CIP for Albany Park, I'm just curious if you can educate us, Susan, from 2019 to 2023, what improvements are being envisioned? So in 2020, there's about $500,000, 2021, $350,000, 2022, $600,000, and then 2023, an additional $600,000. How do those amounts relate to the Albany pool?
Well, we thought the phase one of the pool, the original plan was the phase one of the pool improvements would be done in 2020.
And phase one are the bathrooms?
No.
No?
No. Phase one includes the pool fencing, the pool itself, and the infrastructure improvements, and actually doing the conceptual designs for potentially a family-friendly bathroom inside the pool building, and then doing the conceptual plans for the Albany Park bathrooms. And that would be done in a subsequent phase.
Okay.
And then the subsequent after that, so not to get too far off track, but in Albany Park, we were going to get rid of the Albany Park restrooms that float in the park. And one of the whole goals is to make the entrance to the pool much more inviting. And so seeing the back end of a storage area isn't very attractive. And so the idea is to use that back fence where the mechanical room is and back that into new family-friendly non-designated restrooms that back up to the pool, and they would be built in a subsequent year. And then the following years you would be making improvements, like on the playground. And so honestly, a lot of the budgeting wasn't so much like how much do these things cost, it was more like what's a reasonable amount of money that we could spend in a kind of a project itself that we could handle on Albany Park. And what I was a little bit alluding to is I think the work that we did on the proposal kind of maybe hinted that our infrastructure needs are gonna be so much greater that it's really gonna be harder to get all that done in 2020, because it may mean that our, capital costs of just replacing things and putting in these new motors and stuff, and you don't even get to the fun stuff like this.
Can I just suggest that since this is just the point where we're just authorizing
Yep.
engagement of services, that we ask that when there's something more to look at and talk about, like what Gary and Jennifer are talking about, that we bring it back in, because I think the public will be super interested in this. And at this point in the game, it's hard to get that. And also, we know that Tony wants to make some comments. Is that okay with you guys?
I have one more.
Sure.
Just I want to ensure that with this design process, that we design something that we can afford.
Absolutely.
Great. Because we have gone through design processes before for things that we haven't been able to afford, and just want to ensure that we're putting.
Okay. Tony, did you want to make comments?
Sure, just really quickly. Once again, I'm Tony Kronberg, and I'd like to thank the council very much. As I said earlier during the 3-minute public comment, it's exceeded my expectations. The fact that you're hiring a pool consulting company to move this forward. I am more than happy to help with the community outreach. I have a water baby swimming company that I've been in business for 42 years, and I started the list of pools that I have supported is probably at least 50 or 60 just within this area. Everything from the Aspen Recreation Center, the Snowmass Rec Center, Aspen Club, Snowmass Club, Maroon Creek Club, Aspen Athletic Club. When I first moved to town 42 years ago, it's only one pool, the Hotel Jerome. In order to teach swimming, I had to fall into that role of lobbying for pools. The Little Nell Residence Pool, the rooftop pool, it's one of the best teaching pools. One of the things that I would like to encourage from the get-go is Gary made a really good point of clarifying that we need to focus on the kiddie area, not so much the kiddie pool, because geographically or topographically, people are kind of confused. The swimming lessons, my understanding, they're not taught in the kiddie area, they're taught in the kiddie section of the big pool. So we need to make that differentiation. As you know, I've been lobbying before the council, 4 or 5 years to make this happen. The very first question that most people ask me is, can we do fundraising? And it's something that the community supports, which surprised me in all my years of lobby work. I've never had anyone say, can we help with fundraising? Are we gonna do fundraising? So to me, that indicates there's a big community interest. One of my other goals is the schools are right next door to the pool. The last 2 weeks right now of August, the pool is closed. It's only open 2 hours a day for lap swimmers. My intention had been to pull kids out of the school to develop an after-school program because it's right there. That's what we did in Aspen. The pools, we built a bridge to connect the schools with the pools so that we can develop the kids as best as they can be. Your focus is on early childhood education. When they become teenagers, that's the danger zone, and that's where we really need to concentrate on and making it a generational type of pool. You've got handicapped. There's so many possibilities with that kiddie area that the water depth is crucial, not 6 inches. We need more like 3 to 4 feet. The Element Hotel pool at Willits, I encourage all of you to go take a quick look at that and just see the size of it. And I taught swimming there a couple years ago, I can't remember how many years ago it was, in an attempt to see what the demand is in the Mid-Valley area, and they eventually told me that the program was too popular and I had to leave because it was a hotel pool and we just had way too many people there. So one of the things I wanted to bring forward is whatever we don't get in Basalt, the next goal, as I said earlier to council, is to push those things to Crown Mountain Park. Because we've got thousands of kids here, and this summer, the list of my wait list, I have to either go to Aspen, Snowmass, Carbondale, or Glenwood to really offer the swimming. So I just wanted to put that out there, and thank you for the time, because to me, it's really important. We just have this little section, and then Crown Mountain, and then we have all of our pools up and down the valley. So I'm more than happy, as I said, to do community outreach to help with it.
Thanks,
And starting
Tony.
with the schools.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, did we ever get a motion and we lost a voter now?
Mayor, I move the town council approve resolution number 31, series of 2019.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And I guess we'll just say that we're missing one.
She didn't vote.
She didn't vote. She reneged from voting. Okay, 6J is resolution 30. Did we go 31 then 30?
We just wanted to keep all the post items together.
Okay.
That was a little,
Okay.
that was a little.
Okay, a resolution of the town approving the sign design for the East Two Rivers Road entry sign and directing town staff to request bids for fabrication and installation of the sign.
So, thank you. I'd like to introduce a couple of members of the Basalt Chamber Sign Committee that we have here this evening. We've got Lynn Mace, the chair of the sign committee. We've got Watkins Folk Gray, and we've got Chris Matera. That's it. So this item is consideration of a resolution that would approve of the east entrance entry sign design and direct staff to put it out to bid for fabrication and installation. As background, council provided direction to staff and the Basalt Chamber Sign Committee in in January to commission Nick Aceto and Aceto Landscape Architecture and Design to design the entry signs for both the east and west entrances of Two Rivers Road at the intersections of Two Rivers Road and Highway 82. Aceto provided the design that's in your packet this evening. And the sign committee reviewed that design and recommended approval of the design for the east entrance sign at the east entrance of Two Rivers Road and Highway 82. The sign committee felt that the west entrance sign should be moved to the Willits area and merged with the sign design for Willits Town Center that was previously designed by Nick Aceto. And Aceto is in the process of merging the west entry sign design with the Willits sign design for consideration. As far as the east entrance sign design goes, it includes several landscape walls, as you see up here and you have in your packet. It also has standalone letters that read Basalt on it, and then also includes a plinth behind it that would be used for public art. Aceto designed the sign for a budget of installation and fabrication of up to $35,000. The resolution that you have in your packet would approve of the design and direct staff to work with CDOT on permitting that would be necessary as it would be in the CDOT right-of-way. It also would direct staff to put the request out for bid for fabrication and installation of the east entry sign, and then the staff and sign committee would come back with a contract for consideration after the bid process is over. The 2019 budget included $50,000 for design of the east and west entry signs, as well as fabrication and installation of one entry sign. And then also the south side sign landscaping, which was recently concluded. So we've got funds budgeted for this year for the sign. Lynn, do you have additional comments or no?
No, he did a good job.
I'll answer questions.
Any other members of sign committee? Anything additional? Okay. So staff would answer any questions that council has, and then staff would suggest having council discussion on the design.
Anybody? Questions? Motions?
Mayor, I move the town council approve resolution number 30, series of 2019.
Is there a second?
Second.
Boy, pulling teeth here. Further discussion?
I have a comment.
Yes.
So I would love to see, just as a suggestion, with this beautiful sign being placed on the southeast corner of the intersection, to consider improving the landscape on the northwest corner, which is the wetlands area, and there are numerous dead trees with various crawling plants growing up them, and maybe it's wildlife habitat.
It's actually not in town, I think where you're
Is that the county property?
Yeah,
I think that's the county property.
it is.
Okay.
Maybe we could send a message.
Yeah.
But I had that same question though, is it wildlife or not, what you're talking about?
Okay, so I'm all about the beautification.
Yeah.
And let's have complimentary corners.
So I believe we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okey dokey. And I-
Seconds of fame, James.
Thank you, guys.
It's good to be on late because we're tired, right? Okay, 6K.
Thank you very much.
Resolution
Yes.
number
No.
26, a resolution of the town council approving an amendment to employment agreement with Jeff,
Ah,
Ryan Mahoney.
with town manager, and it is Jeff.
Sure.
It's Jeff again.
Council, Ryan's been operating under an employment agreement. It's for a 2-year term. What's in front of you is an amendment to the employment agreement to, the primary change would be to extend the term of the agreement by 2 years, an additional 2 years. The salary would remain the same. There are a few other cleanup items to the employment agreement that are made in this amendment. There's an incorrect reference to the charter. There is clarification as to the employee housing unit that Ryan's permitted to occupy as part of the agreement, and an increase in the number of vacation days, and otherwise just deleting a few other obsolete provisions and providing for an annual review, and that prior to the expiration of this contract, we'd be reviewing a potential amendment again prior to the expiration of it. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them, or
Are there any
Happy as well.
questions for Jeff or Brian? Is there a motion?
Mayor, I move the town council approve resolution number 26, series of 2019.
Second. We'd like to hear just a little bit more excitement in that motion.
well, it was a good motion.
Mayor, I move the town council approve resolution number 26, series of 2019, because I like Ryan Mahoney.
I thought you got a double
That's
second.
excellent. All in favor?
Aye.
Hip hip parade?
Who was the second?
Parade?
there are 2 seconds.
Hip hip parade. All right.
After the last couple of weeks, you might not want it.
It's over, you guys, it's over. It's over, we're adjourned. We're adjourned.
Did you get 2 seconds?
Katie and.
You have a choice.
Mayor? We weren't too bad. 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
we
not
can-
bad. I thought, I looked at the thing and I said we'd be done at 8.
I liked that our
Yeah,
previous
because
agenda